Welcome back to another segment of the BCS Report. Brandon Clay, I'm Marques Burnett. Great lineup of topics. Today, Brandon, let's start off with the Dix Nationals event. The teams have been selected. One of the best events to play in the country.
It's amazing how that event has evolved, Marcus. I remember when they were first getting started and trying to build it up, and now the name really speaks for itself. It definitely is a premier destination for boys teams and for girls teams. This year, all 12 of the teams, 8 boys, 4 girls, are currently ranked in the top 25 in the country. And no surprise, you've got Mount Verde, Kevin Boyle's team down out of Florida, and then Oak Hill, Steve Smith's group headlining the event. You think it can't get much better than that, but then it does. You got Finley Prep, you got St. Benedict's Prep, La Lemire out of Indiana, and then a hometown team for us in Miller Grove. So many quality groups that are playing. It's hard to come out and pick a winner looking at the lineup, Marcus.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that really says we're in store for a great treat. And that's just on the boys' side. You look at the girls' side of things, Riverdale Baptist out of the Maryland area, St. Francis, another Atlanta-based team, then Seton Catholic and Rybald rounding out that lineup. Just great basketball on both sides of the coin.
Well, when you look at Riverdale Baptist on the girls' side, Sam Caldwell's done a great job with that program. Diane Richardson was at the head of that. She moved on to the collegiate level. Now Sam has stepped in and really kept that thing going at a very, very high rate right now. They are sitting in the top 10 of the country. Just came off of the National Independent Championships in Dayton, Tennessee last week. Won that. Seton Catholic's got a couple of young ladies, the Worth twins. Karen Self has done a great job with that program out of Arizona. We talk about St. Francis locally. Aisha Kennedy, formerly Aisha Gaddis, has done an awesome job. Plenty of talent there, whether it's Amaya Dodson, whether it's a Kashi Kishkitawa, Michelle Tampa, Taja Cummings in the backcourt. So many kids on that roster who can all play. And then you look at a Reebok, Renaya Davis, headliner, arguably one of the top 25 prospects in the class of 2017. She played at the PSB Summer Kickoff last year in July with Essence. Had an opportunity to sit with Essence Travel Director Kim Davis-Powell at the Florida State Championships a couple of weeks ago, and Maryland was in the building to see Davis. So no shortage of suitors for most of these young ladies who are headlining these groups, and it should be a great field. I know all the games will be broadcast on television, so be able to check those out. But it's just a great, great field. It'll be interesting to see not only what the local teams do, but what the national power teams do. There's an upset in the first round of that event every single year.
And we look at some of those first round matchups. Start with game 4 there on day 1. You got Miller Grove taking on Finley Prep. And you look at Miller Grove playing through an official state classification, having just won the state championship here in Georgia. Finley Prep, their name precedes them. That should be a very good matchup and also a potential upset watch.
Well, when you talk about a great matchup of guard play, you've got Altariq Gilbert versus Marcus Howard on the other side. Marcus Howard, a lot of talk about him possibly reclassing into the 2016 class. He's in 17 right now, made it the USA basketball team last summer. Fantastic point guard and very much Gilbert's counterpart. Gilbert going to UConn, McDonald's All-American. For those of you who aren't familiar with the name, you should be. So make sure you research both those young men. And I think it's one of those, as they go, either one of those guys for the team, their teams will go. Almost like the Frank Jackson-Kobe Simmons matchup that happened at Hoop Hall, where Kobe had a great game for St. Francis, but Frank finished with like 45, and his team was able to win the game Lone Peak. So I see another one of those type of mano-a-mano battles here between Howard and Gilbert coming up at Dix.
And a couple elements to look for. You look at that Miller Grove team. You talked about Lone Peak. They lost to Lone Peak at the buzzer there. So definitely a schedule that has prepared them for a moment like this. I think another player to watch in that matchup is Aaron Augustin. Not the same tier as an Altariq Gilbert or Marcus Howard, but a player that is really looking to use that event to garner a couple more D1 offers. Former East Tennessee State committee.
No question. And on the flip side of that, you look at P.J. Washington for Finley Prep, another guy that has put himself into the conversation as one of the best 17s in the country, and this is a big national stage for him to continue to grow his game and grow the spotlight as well. So plenty of players in that one and plenty of players in the whole event. I'm looking forward to watching it myself.
And like you mentioned, the others, Wasatch Academy, Oak Hill, Providence Day, Mount Verde, St. Benedict's Prep, and La Lumiere out of a state that's pretty well known for basketball, wouldn't you say?
It's all right, man. I know you're a homer, man.
That's my first and last Indiana plug when it comes to basketball. My apologies.
You're a homer, man. Go ahead and talk about Jackie Young while you're at it, since we're talking about Indiana. Give us the background on that, man.
Jackie Young, I remember you giving me the synopsis on Jackie Young prior to a Peach State basketball event, and then I saw her play in person. And when we talk about as good as advertised, that's Exhibit A right there.
Well, when you talk about 2012, the Elite Basketball Academy All-American Camp, I remember vividly, seeing Jackie play the summer before and her accepting an invite. And a huge shout out to Audra Rexing and Bailey Rexing, who now is out of Eastern Washington, but their family is from Indiana, helped to make that connection a reality. And here we sit 4 years later, and we're going to have the opportunity to honor Jackie on Sunday at the Naismith Awards Banquet as the girls' National Player of the Year. And to say that she is deserving, Marcus, is an understatement. All-time leading scorer, boys or girls, inside of the Hoosier State. Is going on to play at Notre Dame. And quite frankly, in a 16 class that has plenty of stars at the top, she could shine the brightest. Her college teammate, Aaron Boley, also in this class, will enter as a 16 from Notre Dame. Was another kid that was first team, all Naismith, garnered some Vulture Player of the Year. Joyner Holmes, Lauren Cox, Krista Dangerfield. Plenty of kids that made the decision hard, first year sitting as the chairman and coordinator of the voting, but Jackie ended up winning it all. So congratulations to her, to her high school Princeton, and to her club team, the Indy Lady Gym Rats. Former coach Yanni Rago will be escorting her down on Sunday to take part in the ceremony.
So that's the Naismith Player of the Year there on the girls' side of things. Let's jump over to the boys' side, the trophy selection there.
Lonzo Ball had arguably the best high school season of anybody that I've seen in my 14 years of covering the sport. 6'5" point guard, headed to UCLA, Chino Hills High School in California. And when I tell y'all at home he made this thing look like a video game, it was like he was sitting back with the controller in his hand, just pressing buttons. It was crazy, Marcus. Watched him at City of Palms, and his new nickname should be Mr. Triple-Double. 15 triple-doubles on the season as a 6'5" point guard. He made a pass so mean during hoop ball back in January, caught the basketball on one end line, fading out of bounds, Marcus, throws it the length of his court to his brother, who then caught it and finished it. I mean, it must have been an 84-foot pass. It reminds me of Mike Vick in the Virginia Tech days, when he would just run around, scramble, Florida State's trying to catch him, they can't catch him, and all of a sudden he just heaves one, and you're like, oh, nice pass, man. That's how I feel about Ball and Ball's game, and it's just unbelievable to watch the type of year that he had, narrowly defeating Jason Tatum from Chaminade out of St. Louis, who also had a fantastic season. Ball's Chino Hills team being #1 in the country probably gave him a little bit of an edge there when it came to the voting. But either young man would have been a great selection for us, following up Ben Simmons in 2015 as the Naismith POI.
On the college level, that Player of the Year hasn't been decided yet. Let's talk about some of the guys in the running, whether it's a Buddy Hield, Bryce Johnson. Talk about some of these potential finalists and what you see the race coming down to potentially.
Well, when you look at it, I think Bryce Johnson's a great place to start. North Carolina really has put himself on the map in the second half of the season. That 39-point, 23-rebound performance. How can you not at least give some credit there? I mean, that's fantastic. You talk about what Buddy Hield has done over the course of a season, whether it's the 40-plus spot on Fog Allen Fieldhouse floor there against Kansas. I mean, the young man's averaging 25 a night, 5.5 boards for a team that at one point was #1 in the country, and quite honestly might not have another first-round NBA pick on the roster with him at any point. So when you look at Perry Ellis, Wayne Selden out of Kansas, I mean, a ton of guys that you could mention in there. I think Ben Simmons, for as much expectation and hype as there was going into the season for that young man, the freshman at LSU, we had a #1 in our high school rankings last year in 2015. People were even saying that Skylar Bissier at Kentucky might be better than Simmons. We disagreed, and he's put up the numbers to back that up for us, averaging 19.6 points, 11-plus rebounds a night, and 5 assists. So I get it, the LSU's not performed to the level of which you hoped that they would, but Simmons has definitely held up his end of the bargain individually. And then I think another guy that made the 10 semifinalist list, Tyler Eulis from Kentucky. Now, maybe he doesn't win Player of the Year at the end of the day, but the diminutive point guard, only 5'9", but has played out of his mind, Marcus, has been able to average 19 points and just over 7 assists for a Kentucky team that is starting to get it rolling. John Calipari actually announced today that he is going to forego his last 2 seasons of college basketball and will turn pro at the end of this year. And taking a look ahead, I think that's one of those things that for Tyler, He shoots 31% from beyond the arc. He's going to have to improve that. You know, a guy in that size range needs to shoot in the mid to high 30s from beyond the arc at the next level to keep defenses honest. But you've seen some success, whether it's an Earl Boykins, whether it's a Muggsy Bogues. There have been some guys, even a Spud Webb, you know, that have been smaller guys that have been able to be successful at the next level. So be interesting to keep an eye on him. And then Kay Felder from Oakland as well, who's averaging right at 25 a night, like 9 rebounds and then also 9 assists. So a lot of good things happening there for guys under 5'10" this year in college basketball.
You look at players like Ulis, a lot of times you hear that, you know, the phrase airport test, and it seems like a guy that size, he always starts off with 2 strikes against him to where he has to accomplish that much more for his height or his stature not to be used against him. And I think when you look at Ulis, back to his days in the Chicago Catholic League, one of the more physical leagues that you'll find in the country, you'd always hear about this guy Calipari was recruiting, and then you see him play and see, okay, I definitely get why, despite that height listing in the roster book, why this guy's going to Kentucky. I think he's only shown that on the court.
Well, I think you talk about production over potential there, Marcus. I say all the time, potential will get a coach fired. You have 12 people on the roster. Hey, so-and-so's got potential. That's great until you play a team full of people that produce, and then you're in trouble. So you've got to have some guys like Tyler that maybe don't pass that airport test. But when it's time and the lights are on and there are 15, 20,000 people inside a Rupp Arena, they produce. You got to have some people like that, and he definitely has been one for Calipari's Wildcats this season.
There have been some talks about a new, I won't say changing of the guard, but Grayson Allen taking on that Duke guy that you love to hate role, not only with his ability to kind of demand that respect with his production on court, but also just some of the swagger and things of that nature. Your thoughts on the season he's having there for the Blue Devils?
He's definitely having a J.J. Redick-like season. You know, maybe not the numbers that J.J. put up, but definitely filling that role as that perimeter guy that can do a little more than just make a jump shot. He's not going to talk crazy to you, but he's going to make sure you understand that he's nice. And as a result, nobody likes him. It's just kind of what it is. We like to hate guys that go to Duke. Leitner, Grant Hill caught some of that flack. You look at J.J. Redick, I mean, throughout the course of history, yeah. It's great because Wojo is the smallest but easily the most demonstrative of any of those guys and has done a heck of a job. You talk about Marquette and the job that he's doing there. Even with Henry Ellenson, the freshman there on campus, he's producing at a level that we would have projected as a top 10 guy in 15 last year. So the Duke guys are doing okay, man. Grayson Allen definitely is next up. And then Brandon Ingram as well as having a heck of a freshman season. So plenty of production there, endurance, taking them a second to get it going. But now that it's going, it's looking good. So it'll be interesting to see how they finish the season off.
And see how Allen improves that footwork. He's had some issues with footwork at different points throughout the game.
I mean, he might have taken 4 steps to win the game. He might not have. He won the game. We're going to let it ride.
Let's jump on to the girls' side. You know, as much as we could go on and on about some of the boys' finalists and their respective cases, I think you also have some interesting dialogue here on the girls' side. You know, Brianna Stewart, she's always going to be in the mix when it comes to that. But Kelsey Mitchell, Kelsey Plum, others make sure that this isn't just a one-pony race. Your thoughts?
I definitely think Stewart's the favorite. You know, there's no need to deny the elephant in the room, right? She's really good, has done it at a high level for 3 years. And people can say whatever they want about awards. Oh, it doesn't matter from one year to the next. Yes, it does. You know, with the body of work that you put together, it's like building a resume to go talk to an employer. When you've done it year in, year out, it definitely impacts the way that people view your resume on paper before you even get started. So let's acknowledge that about Stewart. But she's backing it up, right at 19 a night, 11 rebounds a night. I mean, she's been fantastic. I think it's 19.6 and 9 rebounds, another 4 assists a night. She's done everything that you expect the kid that leads the #1 team in the country to do. She's been great. Really where I think the intrigue starts is with a kid like Rachel Banham from Minnesota. Was out last year with an ACL, filed the hardship appeal to get a 5th year, got the medical red shirt 5th year, 27.7 points a night, 5.9 rebounds, and 3.9 assists. And we talk about video games with a guy like Lonzo Ball. These are video game type numbers that Rachel Banham is putting up. Like, it's against real people, man. It's not like she's out there playing some high school kids. She's playing against Kelsey Mitchell. She's playing against Ariel Powers from Michigan State. Other kids that in any other league in the country with their numbers and stat lines would have been the conference player of the year. Banham goes in and gets it done and snags that trophy while she's at it. Then you look at Mitchell, her Big Ten Conference counterpart, and Mitchell's numbers, nothing to play with. 25 and a half a night, 3 rebounds, another 3 assists. Every single night, she's bringing it. So you've got 2 kids in one league that arguably could win the Player of the Year in any other league, which is amazing. And then last but not least, I think you look at Kelsey Plum out of Washington and the job that the junior guard is doing for Coach Mike Neighbors. And having been on campus a couple of times now during Plum's tenure there, just to watch the development of her relationship with the staff as a whole, but especially with Mike Neighbors, there was a great clip that the Pac-12 Conference captured during the course of the year where there was a timeout in the huddle and Plum and Neighbors are sitting together, standing together, away from the team. Plum takes the clipboard, draws something for Neighbors. Neighbors looks at the clipboard, shakes his head. Plum shakes her head. She pats him on the behind and walks into the huddle. And if you know Kelsey Plum and you saw her play in high school the way that we did, you appreciate that because it's so what she does. And now you take a look at her numbers, Marcus, and she's backing it up. 26 and a half a night, 5.5 rebounds, and then 3.8 assists a game. She's not playing with these kids. So any of those 4 people could be the National Player of the Year. And I personally, as a member of the Voting Academy, would have no objection. I think Stewart leads the race as we get into the postseason. But all 4 of those candidates have the resume to back up them winning it all.
Yeah, you got your work cut out for you there. As a member of that voting committee, that's not the only voting committee you're a part of. As we transition away from the Naismith Trophy conversation, we look at the McDonald's All-American games. Obviously, those teams and rosters have already been decided. Let's talk a little bit about that game headed to the Windy City here at the end of this month. First off, on the boys' side, this time of year always brings up discussions on, well, can't believe this guy didn't make it. Can't believe that woman didn't make the squad. Who do you take off? That's what makes it tough about having to sit in the selection committee seats. But your thoughts on the roster here on the boys' side?
Well, I tell people all the time, the hardest thing is to try to take somebody off the list, right? Like, you can come to me, well, Bam Adebayo shouldn't be a McDonald's All-American. Kobe Simmons shouldn't be a McDonald's. Okay, that's fine. Who do we swap out? What do we do? And when you give people that scenario, they just kind of look at you like, well, I don't know. Because the people that are on there are good. They can play, or they want to swap a point guard for a center and give us a 7th point guard and no centers. That's not a game either. We want it to look like a game. We don't want 7 centers and no point guards. We don't want 7 point guards and no centers. So trying to find that balance and then also make sure that the representation is correct. It's hard, for lack of a better term. I didn't realize how hard it was until I sat on the committee this year. I called our fellow committee member Chris Hansen multiple times. Hey man, I'm stuck. I'm on 23. We got 1 spot left and I have 10 kids that could fill it. And just understanding that dynamic and knowing that you're going to leave some quality kids off. And you look at the boys roster, I feel really good about the guys that are leading them. We talked about Ball, we talked about Tatum, Josh Jackson, Miles Bridges from Huntington Prep, De'Aaron Fox. I mean, you name it and they're on there. So all that being said, Marcus, I feel good about the work that we've done, but you're going to leave 10 to 12 kids that can potentially play in the game and be good at home.
Yeah, I think that's the way you have to look at it. You have to know that everybody that's deserving might not make it, but also, I think too many times we look at things in a vacuum when it comes to just that specific list. Let's look at it from a 4 to 5 year span and see some of the kids that might not make this roster selection. They use that as either fuel or realize that the game is being played on much larger stages aside from just that All-Star game. So no need to, I think, overreact when it comes to that. But let's look at some of those names that you mentioned. You talk about Adebayo, you look at Jason Tatum, Markelle Fultz, Terrence Ferguson, Kobe Simmons, and Tariq Gilbert representing the state of Georgia. It should make for some very good practice sessions there, long before the cameras are rolling on ESPN for the game.
Well, and they get a ton of NBA scouts that come out. Our international director of scouting, Kyle Moore, will be there for the duration. He goes every year, Monday through game day, and takes in the practices. You talk about a guy like Adebayo that's going to Kentucky, and he is just a monster. Grabs the ball off of the glass, can handle it, can go coast to coast, can shoot the 12 to 15 footer. I actually was talking with my dad the other day. We were breaking down the rosters, and John Clay is a sports junkie, so it was just informing John Clay of some of the guys that I've seen, and he was reading some of the Brandon Clay scoutingreport.com, player cards on the site, and he was like, who's this Bam kid, man? He looks like he's pretty good. And I'm like, Yeah, Dad, he's all right, man. He's 6'9" and like 240. He's going to be okay. And his skill set already, you look at him and he reminds you of, say, Kenneth Perry, who's in the NBA now, physically. But his skill set is much further along than Kenneth was at the same point. Now, whether he'll be able to get to where Kenneth has gotten to be, which is an elite specialist in the NBA and a guy that at any moment in time can get you 12 to 15 rebounds, remains to be seen. But there's some Julius Randle to what he does in terms of the coast-to-coast that Kenneth didn't do. So if you're a Kentucky fan, lots of reasons to like Bam. And we talked about a guy like a Josh Jackson, plays high school basketball at Napa Prolific Prep there in California, originally from Michigan, was actually on his official visit to Michigan State last weekend, might wind up playing alongside Miles Bridges from Huntington Prep, who's also in the game, who's already committed to Michigan State. Jackson is smooth, he's a great athlete, quick rides, gets up off the floor in a hurry, can shoot it. He does a little bit of everything. Was at USA Basketball this fall and was just so impressive the way that he's rounded out his game. Not only an athlete, but he's a skilled guy too, so let's make sure we get that there documented. Same thing with Bridges. Lefty, can shoot it. You know, one of the best moments of the high school season was him going up against Oak Hill's Braxton Key, making a shot, and then yelling at Key, "You can't guard me." You know, our director of domestic scouting, Jonathan Hemingway, was on hand on the SUV broadcast and talked about it honestly being the highlight of his season, just to see a guy playing with that type of energy and passion. So expect big things all week long in practice. We'll have it documented. Like I said, Kyle Moore will be on hand. I'll be on hand for game day, and then so will Chris Hansen. So I'm looking forward to it.
Look at Bridges and Josh Jackson. Are always sparks when those guys link up. Their teams in Prolific Prep and Huntington Prep have played each other in 3 exhibition games prior to facing off at the Flying to the Hoop Invitational we broadcasted back on MLK weekend. And you talk about a great game that I'm sure a lot of people have seen the finish to. Josh Jackson, after having his team turn it over with a chance to tie the game previously, gets a second chance at it. Full court heave, he catches it at the top of the key, splashes it over the outstretched arm of Miles Bridges. And that's just one chapter, and I think what's going to be a very good story, whether those guys end up being teammates in East Lansing or if they just end up going at it. Either way, it's going to be a treat.
Well, it's 2 competitors at the end of the day. It's neat to watch, and I think that's the part that you get out of All-American Week, inside of the practices, and even inside of the game when it gets late, to see the guys competing, to see the young ladies competing. So I'm interested to see, obviously, not only from a guy's dynamic who steps up, but from a girl's dynamic too, Marcus, who brings their A game to the table, in addition to the young ladies we mentioned who were in contention for that Naismith Player of the Year earlier.
So look at some of the players on the east side there in that McDonald's All-American game. Aaron Boldy, when you mentioned, will be a future teammate of Jackie Young. You look at Lindsay Corsero, who's no stranger to the Elite Basketball Academy, as well as several Peach State basketball defense. And then Alicia Sutton out of the Show Me State as well, just a few names.
Yeah, well, unfortunately for Sutton, she suffered an ACL after the teams were released, so won't be able to play in the game, but definitely earned her spot through her play during the high school season. A future Texas Longhorn, part of the Elite Basketball Academy series. There was Super 64 back in June. Also attended the CoachHemi.com showcase last fall as well, and really showed improved. Used those venues to grind it out and show that she belonged. You talk about Lindsay Corsaro and her ability out of the Indianapolis, Indiana area, again, to show improvement. She did that by being up first thing in the morning, July 23rd through 25th, to get shots up as she was recovering from an ACL. I went to go watch her play a high school game in early November, dropped a light 30 spot in the W, and had 120 points in 3 games. All 3 of them wins over ranked teams to lead her Roncalli team to start the season. So many kids who built their profiles and really done a great job, not only during the school season, but also with the camp circuits and camp series that are available in the off season. And we talk all the time, Marcus, about how do you continue to grow your game, and how do you continue to get better, and how do you continue to be able to shine when the lights are on. And whether it's the LeBron James camp on the men's side, Adidas Nations, the Under Armour All-American camp, NBPA Top 100 on the girls' side, you talk about the Elite Basketball Academy series, the Check Me Out Showcase series, the CoachHemi.com workout series, the Kyle Moore showcases, so many different ways to continue to develop your game. And then you see it on full display when the lights are on with the best in the business as they get down on game week in Chicago for the McDonald's.
Yes, and a ton of triggers as I just look at both team lists between Elite Basketball Academy, Kyle Moore Showcase, Check Me Out, and then Coach Hemi hard for me to really find, two names without seeing former camp participants here on this list.
Well, it speaks a lot to you. Talk about Sabrina Ionescu. Check me out. Back in August, had the opportunity to work with her. You guys broadcasted on TV. Chastity Lee Carter out of Tennessee, EBA, and then also a Coach Hemi kid. So many of these elite level kids understand, hey, I want to get in the gym. I want to be better. Jenny Bain, check me out. Midwest was a part of that. She's from Illinois. She's in the game. So seeing all these different kids work their behinds off to put themselves just in a position where people are aware of what they're doing. You talk about the video, the production team that we have here for the show, same type of production that we have there on site at all the different camps that are run. And it's cool. It's cool to watch it all come together and then to be able to talk about it here on the BCS Report.
Let's wrap up with a few closing nuggets. Let's talk about some of the stock risers that we've been able to see on both sides here in this season at various levels.
Well, I think when you talk about the 17 class, Michael Porter Jr. is a guy who I thought had a quality summer, but really took his game to another level. City of Palms, playing alongside his brother Jonte, who's going to Washington. Mike's still uncommitted, but he really was carrying the load against some really high-level national teams. And in the 17 class, he's established himself as one of the go-tos. You talk about Wendell Carter out of Pace Academy here in the city. Another guy that's established himself as a top 5 prospect in the class, firmly entrenched there with the season he had. They capped that off with the state championship. I think a name to keep kind of fresh and right there on the cusp is Davion Mitchell out of South Georgia. High riser, athlete, skill. Sean Williams from OnTheRadarHoops.com, also part of the Naismith voting committee, tweeted out a dunk of Mitchell earlier this year. They got close to 1,000 retweets, and for good reason. I mean, Mitchell is just a high flyer already committed to Auburn, and that's a guy from a national ranking perspective. I think you see some movement there for him during the course of the offseason. And then I think on the girls' side, you watch a kid like a Carissa McLaughlin from Homestead out of Indiana. She's a kid that could potentially rise this summer. 2017 guard, Florida, came to the Elite Basketball Academy, All-American Clay Marques, and I thought did a heck of a job of showing she wasn't just a shot maker, but she's a kid that could put the ball on the floor, she could attack, she'll play with the Indy Lady Gym Rats this summer. So as you can tell, a lot of different kids have made their mark during the school season. Looking forward to watching them. I know we talked about Renaya Davis and the Dicks for Reball. That's another kid in 17 to keep an eye on who can catapult herself. And then likewise with Amaya Dotson from St. Francis. So keep an eye on all those kids as the season comes to a close. Still isn't over yet, and they got a chance to continue to up their stock.
Yeah, I'll just look at 2 stock risers on the Georgia high school basketball side of things. Then Colin Sexton had a great season. His Pebblebrook squad fell just short to a loaded Westlake team there in the championship. But coming into the season, even though Sexton had some fanfare around him, it was primarily Jared Harper and the high clip that he can score at. But you look at Harper averaging 27 points, great. Colin Sexton comes in at 28.3 points per game this season.
Well, those fellows were fantastic. I had the opportunity to broadcast their game from the aforementioned Sean Williams event after Thanksgiving. I know one of our production team members, Jordan Davis, was also on hand helping out with some social media and things like that. We had a conversation, myself, Jordan, Sean, and Jonathan Hemingway, after the Pebblebrook game had ended, that, man, this Sexton kid, he's a top 50 caliber guy next year. And honestly, if he does what I think he's going to do on the circuit with Southern Stampede and then in some of the camps that we mentioned earlier, could very well play himself up the ladder. It reminds me of Malik Beasley, who's having such a great freshman season at Florida State. And I remember the times when it was Kaiser Gates and Kobe Simmons, and Beasley was kind of an afterthought. And game after game after game and highlight after highlight after highlight, Beasley rose his stock through his play and his production. Expect the same thing from Colin this summer after a great school season.
And then my last stock riser, we jump to the Palmetto State. They're at 22 Feet Academy. Jordan Bowden having a very solid season when you look at the national schedule those guys have put together. No D1 offers as a result of not playing a ton on the club ball circuit coming into the season, but since then he's picked up Marquette, Utah, Providence has offered recently, so keep an eye on the sharpshooting wing there at 22 feet.
When you look at Bowden, I also want to make sure that we mention Nicholas Claxton from Legacy Charter up there, and then also Devontae Schuler from Irmo. So 3 guys inside the Palmetto State that really could see their stock blow up this summer as they get it rolling. I'm really excited to see what the summer holds. I'm ready to get back on the road. Been in the office here for the last month or so, tightening up the notes from the wintertime and getting our player rankings ready for a re-release But it's time for it. It's time to be back out on the circuit, get out to some of these major events and be able to see these young men and these young women play and earn their spots inside the BrandonClayScouting.com rankings.
It's that time of year we couldn't be happier. We appreciate you joining us here on the BCS Report. Brandon Clay, Marques Burnett, we're presented by Peach State Basketball. Thanks for joining us. Until next time.
Any Jimmy's home.